Okay, everybody, and we are live. Hi, my name is Patrick Millikin from the Poison Pen Bookstore, and here's another one of our virtual events we're doing. And it's a real treat and an honor to have Kawan, best-selling author Kawan, with us here this afternoon. We're going to be talking about, in particular, his absolutely killer new novel, Black Lotus 2, The Vow. We'll be talking about both books. Going down memory lane, talking about your other books and whatever else comes to mind. So,
Here for it.
Kawan, Kawan, great to see you, and thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me here. This is big for me. I'm glad.
Yeah, I know you're doing a lot of these virtual events out there. It's kind of the way of the world that we find ourselves in this year, huh?
Yeah, and it really took some adjusting on my part
Yeah,
because I'm like and without running the risk of sounding like a dinosaur. I'm used to like when you do events, you go to the bookstore, you get to talk to people and get feedback and opinions. So the virtual thing, this is new, but I get like it's the new norm.
yeah, yeah. And it's interesting because as an independent bookstore, we're doing a lot of these. We've had to, and but it's been really kind of some unexpected surprises, and it has a different energy and a vibe about it. We miss the in-store, all the energy of the people, but I find that we can get into some really interesting material that we might not in front of an audience. It's kind of
Yeah,
strange.
yeah, it's more of an intimate setting the way you can kind of like just peel back the layers of certain things where maybe in a crowded bookstore you wouldn't be able to get to and spend time discussing and unraveling.
That's right, and we also get a glimpse into Kawan's living space there. Although all we see the dark
this,
curtain there.
this is
Um,
my Zoom chair where like
your Zoom chair.
the art on the back of the wall, that kind of stuff.
Oh,
Um,
that's cool. That's
this
really
is
cool.
this is my Zoom chair because it's just quiet and the light is here and whatever. It's just not all crazy, not
Yeah.
chaotic, chaos in my head.
Well, hey, let me give you a nice formal intro that you deserve. Kawan is the best-selling, award-winning author of more than 30 novels, including the wildly popular Animal series, Black Lotus, Gangsta, Road Dogs, Street Dreams, Hoodlum, and Section 8. He's been featured in Vibe, King, Entertainment Weekly, and Time Magazine. Kawan was the recipient of the 2012 and 2013 Street Lit Book Award medals in adult fiction for Eviction Notice and Animal. His credits also include featured commentary in the documentary Iceberg Slim, Portrait of a Pimp, produced by Ice-T. And what's funny, we were talking a little bit about Iceberg Slim
Yeah.
before. We'll get into that too, as well as a recurring role as an analyst on TV One's Celebrity Crime Files. Kawan resides in New Jersey, where he spends his time writing, cooking, and binge watching reruns of The Vampire Diaries with his teenage daughters.
Yes, and I think they've kind of grown out of the Vampire Diaries now, and the different stuff. We still get our TV time in.
What are you binge watching now?
Umbrella Academy. Of course, Attack on Titan. You see, I got my Titan shirt on. Attack
Yeah,
on Titan. A couple of things.
yeah. Um, well, let's get into it a little bit. I'd like to, as I mentioned in the introduction, you've been an incredibly prolific author. In I think I read that the first kind of your breakthrough work, Gangsta, came out in 2002, was it?
Yeah,
Can you talk a little bit? I saw a quote somewhere where you said that before that you were writing, kind of vampire stuff and more supernatural thriller stuff. Can you kind
yeah.
of, can you kind of set it up and how you came to that point, Gangsta, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay. Well, first, let me say that I was not a writer. I did not see myself as a writer. That was more of something that my mom was good at. Me, I was an art student. So I was taking like this road trip. We were going from New York to Springfield, Illinois by car, or either vice versa. But it's a long ride. So we stopped at a gas station because I had the story in my head. I'm jotting it down. We stopped at a gas station, and I went in and I bought a bunch of like little cheap notebooks and started writing this vampire story. And by the time we got to Illinois, the story was done. Of course, this story goes in a box and is never seen again. With Gangster was a bit more intimate. Um, when I was writing Gangster, my mom had just been diagnosed with terminal cancer. My mom and I had never had the best relationship, but before the diagnosis, we were trying to repair all the years, all the years stuff we missed out on. So like that was my therapy. Like I would visit with her in the hospital, and then I would go home and I started writing this book. It started on a piece of a paper bag. I was having an argument, and I started characterizing the girl I was arguing with on the paper bag. And then it went to a notebook, and then it went to a secondhand computer. So every day I would come home from the hospital and I would work on this story. I didn't have a title for it. It was just kind of it was therapeutic for me, And I always tell people I would retreat to this after spending all day in the hospital or whatever. I would retreat to the pages of the story because it was my safe place. It was a world that I created and I controlled the rules of. So this was a place that was safe for me. This is where nobody was dying, bills weren't due, nothing was going on. So by the time my mom passed, I had finished the manuscript. Now with me, I had no idea how to write a query letter, how to submit a publisher, how to do any of that. So my first reaction was to go to a vanity press and try to get them to put up. And I didn't know the difference between a vanity press and a traditional publisher at the time. I just know it was like one of those ads you see in a magazine. We'll do everything for you for $2,500. Thankfully, I didn't have the $2,500. So what I would do is I would pull all the books, and I have like so many hundreds. I have hundreds of books. You're tripping over books in every room of my house. We're a well-read family. So I would pull out all the books from my bookshelf and I would contact the publisher, the author, whoever had their information listed on the book, I would contact them. And again, I didn't understand query letters. I didn't understand any of the technical or just the protocols, for lack of a better word, the protocols of submitting a manuscript. And I got some really, really nasty feedback. Like people were just like, oh my God, you're just all over the place. There's no market for this. There's nothing. There's boom. So while they're telling me there's no market for what I was writing, I'm buying the very same kind of books from the street vendors.
Right.
So I'm like, wait a minute, these guys are selling a lot of books on the street, but these big publishers are telling me that there's no market for it. So something is wrong. So I ended up reaching out to one of the authors, Vicky Stringer, and I just kind of explained my situation. I did not know, I wasn't looking to get published. I was looking to see what I was doing wrong and why I kept hitting the glass ceiling. And so she offered to either shop me for a deal for a finder's fee or sign me to the publishing house that she was going to start, Triple Crown. So my thinking was, if you take me to a publisher that has a stable, I can get lost in the shuffle. I'm a nobody. Nobody knows me. But if I'm someplace where I'm the only author, then okay, I guess you guys have to divert the majority of your attention and your resources to me. And we put the book out, Gangster, and we did not know what to expect. But in 3 weeks, with no promotion, no bookstores, no social media, no internet, we sold about 10,000 books.
Wow.
All on street corners and to the vendors, and it kind of just took off from there.
Kind of a grassroots following, just word of mouth kind of. Yeah.
Because that was the nature of the beast back then. I didn't get into Barnes and Noble until the book had been out for, I think, 6 months, maybe almost a year. But by that time, we had already sold, I think, almost 100,000 copies.
Wow.
And
That's
this
phenomenal.
is like, and we didn't know, like, we just out there hustling.
It's funny because you probably know this, but John Grisham, had a very similar start. His first book was, he was selling it out of the trunk of his car, very small little press, and that was, I believe, it was Time to Kill.
Wow.
Yeah. So then, it's funny. When I was reading Black Vow 2, and excuse me, Black Lotus 2, the Vow, and I read Kala's story, how she kind of raises herself up by her bootstraps and becomes a writer, and kind of following at the beginning this sort of very DIY kind of progression, and just by sheer hard work, I was thinking, well, there's a bit of Kawan in her story there.
Absolutely, absolutely. As the creator of the universe and the architect of the story, you're always gonna find pieces of me in these characters, and that was one thing. Like you said, like grassroots, no big machine behind her. She just kind of made her own way.
Right. And just to give Akashic a shout out, and then we'll go jump back and forth in time. But
Yeah.
Akashic, uh, I was fortunate enough to edit, the long running noir fiction
Yes.
cities, the anthologies.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to edit the one for Phoenix here, and I got to say, working with Johnny Temple and Ibrahim and all those guys, it's just an incredible experience.
It
I
is.
mean,
They make it really easy. And the crazy thing about the Johnny those guys, the Black Lotus, like Animal was my biggest seller. The Black Lotus was something that I created many years before Animal. And the thing that I ran into when trying to get it out, I had made such an impact in urban street fiction
right.
that when I tried to present something that was not urban by a technical standpoint, they were like kind of like, no, maybe you're stretching it. Maybe you shouldn't, like, this is without reading the stories. They just kind of like, this genre, no. And Johnny and those guys, I'm actually met them through Marvis and Prodigy, God bless, with the Infamous Project. And they were kind of like,
Right.
we'll take a crack at it. This sounds interesting. We'll take a crack at it. And it developed a cult following.
It's funny. I was listening to you do the little program with Johnny, and I was interested to hear about you guys all went to Jamaica together. What was that like? That must have been a hell of a good time.
Man, yeah, it was definitely a good. That was a good trip. That was a really good trip. That was a really. I did a lot.
And
I
you
did a
did
lot
you
I did a lot of
you
writing.
did a lot of writing
I
and
did more writing than anything. Like I'm talking about hours just sitting outside by the pool, just writing. I didn't really. I mean, we had fun. We had a lot of fun in Jamaica, but I got a lot of work done out there too.
were there a lot of readers there who knew who you were?
Yes, to my surprise, there were. I had never been to Jamaica.
That's so cool.
So like, and they all knew the Black Lotus, but they also knew my other titles. And I was telling
Right.
Johnny when he was like, he said to me like, we're going to speak to the people that are coming for the book fair. And I'm like, okay, well, I've spoken in front of people before, people in the room, people in the bookstore. And there was like a couple of hundred people gathered there. And it was the biggest crowd that I had ever seen. And the fact that they were familiar, like they would call me, they couldn't remember my name, but they remembered Black Lotus. And I'm like, this is amazing. And just to be like somewhere else, like I'm not even getting phone reception out here, but they know my work. So it just kind of showed me like, I had a little more reach than I give myself credit for.
Right. Absolutely. That must have been a real thrill.
That
Yeah,
was
I can only
amazing.
imagine. Yeah. Now, we're not going to get into this long talk about labels and all that kind of crap because you guys have talked about it to death already. What I really admired about reading your work for the first time was just, you just throw all that shit out the window. There's elements of all kinds of different things that go together, and it just makes a very unique reading experience. I mean, there's crime fiction, there's kind of a pulpy tone that I really dug with the Lotus stories, but there's also a lot of real deep issues and themes and loss and what these characters have gone through underneath this real fast-paced thriller ride. So no question, they're just more of a compliment.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And the reason for it is because, again, I say we are the architects of these worlds. So it's like you're building these characters out of clay, and you have to give them life. In order for a character to truly have life, he or she has to have a story. So another thing that I say, like in my books, if I give you a name, I have to give you a story. If I give you a name, you have to have some sort of relevance to the story. So it's just like breathing a life, and life comes from everywhere. So it's like you can't pigeonhole yourself and keep in with like one theme. You have to mix, because life is not like that in general. We encounter people from different walks of life, of different thinking, of different backgrounds every day.
Right.
So you have to incorporate it in the way their lives intersect. These people from different walks of life is what makes it real, because it's like every day you meet just new and interesting people from totally different backgrounds than yours, from similar backgrounds than yours. So I think that it should reflect also in the stories to make it real. So it can't just be bang, bang, shoot 'em up, or love and sex. It has to be a melting pot of everything, because that's the world. That's how we live.
Yeah, and all too often in some crime fiction, you don't really see the ripple effects of violent crime on the victims. As you say, they're just kind of nameless deaths.
Right.
And you definitely see, and we'll just kind of jump all over the place. Kala, she's a fascinating character. I'm not going to spoil anything, but you kind of dole out bits of her backstory throughout the two books, and we learn that she suffered horrific abuse in her childhood, and in fiction it seems like it'll go either one of two ways. It's like that kind of thing will completely destroy somebody, and she doesn't act and respond in the way that you think she's going to. Can you talk a little bit about just about that character and how she came to you?
Um, I would be lying if I said I remembered how she came to me. But in her, what I saw, a lot of times in stories, with the exception of a few, when you introduce a female lead character, they can be tough, but there's also a softness about them, a femininity about them. With Kala, it's not like that. Like, she has her whole feminine side and her soft side, but she is strong. She's like iron. And if you notice, like you said, she had these horrible things happen to her growing up, but but never once in the book does she dwell on them, or do they define her.
Right.
Well, it's a part of her story, a part of her history, a part of her life, but just something that she's overcome. Like, some people like, well, this happened to me and it influenced how I lived, or these certain decisions that I made in my life. She doesn't have those kind of hangups. She's kind of she's like a lot like a kid in a lot of ways, as far as just being on her own, being in her own way. And she's an adult, but like, she doesn't really know about relationships. She doesn't know about, because this is not how she was raised. So this is what I mean when I say she's like a kid. Like, certain things like going out on a date or going to the movies, these are alien things to her. These are foreign things to her.
She has a
So
little bit of a feral side.
right, because
Yeah.
she is a weapon. So in all her hardness, that's the soft side about her, because she was manipulated to be this one thing. You're a device. You have no more value than an animal, an attack dog, something you would tie up outside. So it's like the yin and the yang. You have Kala, who is this strong, supportive, and empowering woman, and you have this Black Lotus, who is the dog, who is the weapon.
Right. And then there's also the secret society part of it that I really like. I love those kind of stories. Just irresistible. The Knights Templar, you said, was kind of an influence on that.
Yeah, it was like the Templar Knights mixed in with the Poison Clan. I've always been a big fan of like the Shaw Brothers films, like their whole style and the way they did. And so when they had the 5 Deadly Venoms,
Yeah.
how they had the mask and they were all a part of the same school, but
Right.
nobody knew anybody's identity. So I kind of tapped into that, and that's why you see like a lot of the high action scenes, not so much a shoot 'em up, bang bang, but like choreographed action scenes. It's
Yes.
like, just make it cool. Make it really cool.
Now, was that something, because a lot of people reading some of the reviews and just reading the books myself, the things that stand out immediately are these cinematic scenes. You really put the reader there. You're looking out and you're seeing. I mean, it's just good writing. You're showing and not telling us the story. Did that come naturally to you? Was that something that you really had to work on, or was it just like you were there?
No, I think that's something. I think that's what's always made me stand out as a writer. From the first time I tried it with Gangster to now, my ability to kind of sit down and paint you this picture. Like I'm showing, like I can sit, I can tell you yada yada, so on and so forth. But I want to show you, I want you to know what the food smells like when you're sitting down with the character. I want you to know what the air smells like in this den of sin that they've walked into, or with this girl who's turned 10 tricks today. There's an odor coming off her that puts you in the mind of this and that. I want you, it's like virtual reality. I want you to be sucked in. I want you to drown everything else out and just take this walk with me. And that's why if you go to the first page of my very first book, it says walk with me. X, Y, and Z, and I give you the introduction because I want you to walk with me through these stories. Don't just read them. I want you here with me.
That there's an element of the classic old time storyteller in that, you could picture someone like Mark Twain saying that,
Yeah.
Well, and then fast forward to the new book. What's the first word? Run.
Yeah. And
Run.
it always starts like that for me. People say, how do you get ideas for your books? It's always a thought, a phrase, and it comes to me just quite randomly. Boom, like run. Oh, I got a cool scene. Even though I was already working on the book, run, when it was the word exploded, I said, I can write a whole paragraph based on this one word that would be a dope intro for the book. It's high octane because when you see the word run, immediately your brain starts firing.
Yeah, you're in motion with the characters.
Right. Yeah. Like I'm talking to you, like I'm telling you to run.
Yeah. Yeah. So did that prologue, kind of real kick-ass prologue, come after you'd written the rest of the book or before?
No, it came during. And I actually rewrote that prologue, seriously speaking, 10 times. 10 times. Because I always tell people I write like patchwork quilts. So I have I don't know if it's a good habit or a bad habit. I like to move the chapters around. Like sometimes I'll be reading it and I'll say something doesn't fit, and then I'll shift it. So let's say, for example, if I think chapter 7 would make a better chapter 2. So when I swap places with the 2 chapters, I have to start back from the beginning of the book and weave it all together to make sure that it makes sense.
Right.
So
sounds almost like a storyboard in a way.
Right.
Yeah.
Just kind of shifting plates.
Right. Well, let's just one of the things before we get too much further, I have neglected to do a few things. One of them is address the Facebook audience who's watching this and say, everybody, I'm flying solo here, but I am going to be monitoring the Facebook feed. So if you have questions for Kwan, please go ahead and start thinking about them and getting them in, and then I'll click over there and we'll get to as many as we have time for. And I'll try not to dominate the whole program if I can. But I wanted also, hold up, this is the new book that we're talking about. Beautiful, great cover. Black Lotus 2, The Vow. And here's its predecessor, Black Lotus, right there. And then I also got, here's just one of your earlier ones to show, Wrath.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Wrath.
So yeah, so just to kind of kick off where we are, I don't want to give away too many spoilers here, but as we pick up this second novella or novel, can you kind of tell us what's going on? There's a policeman who's been murdered and left. This is early in the book, so it's not too much of a spoiler, but the killer has left behind a Black Lotus at this crime scene, which is, of course, Kala's signature trademark. And what else can we reveal before we go too much further?
Well, I mean, like a lot of it, because it picks up a few months after the first book. So at this point, she's like, you know what? Well, everybody who's read the first book is familiar with the murder, the child murder, which is what set her down the path and how she developed a relationship with the detective. So at this point, after seeing certain things, like in just being of service to the Brotherhood for so long, she decides to call it quits. She almost died on the last mission. So she's trying to build a normal life. Like you see, like she's experimenting with dating and just regular stuff that she normally wouldn't have been into. And then here is this flower,
Yeah.
Black Lotus. So Black Lotus is back at it. Now, only one person knows that she's the Black Lotus. So even though he doesn't want to believe it, all signs, because it fits her MO, even the spot where, well, I don't even know how I can tell that, but there's just something significant about the murder that ties to her directly.
Yeah.
And so she has to, for one, her name is her name. You know, she's a woman of honor, and her name is being dragged through the mud. That's for one. And for two, she's being looked at for a series of murders that she is not committing. So she has skin in the game now.
Right.
So she has to kind of solve the murder and find out who's really doing the Black Lotus murders before they lower the boom on her and take her to jail.
And then, you know, you mentioned the detective who we haven't really talked about yet, but yeah, James Wolfe, who is, you know, he kind of reminded me a little bit of like Richard Roundtree, you know, or you know, just
that feel,
that classic hard-boiled detective kind of character.
right?
Or, you know, and since you're writing about Harlem, are you a Chester Himes fan? Are you familiar with his?
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Those Harlem domestic novels, like Coffin Ed and Gravedigger Jones.
I love Coffin Ed and Gravedigger. Yeah,
those are brilliant books. You know.
Yeah, and I think I kind of might have with I don't. They're not in this book, but I have two other detectives, Brown and Alvarez. They kind of fit that same mold, and very few people would know if I mentioned. I said, "Hey, you know, Gravedigger." No, Coffin Ed and Gravedigger. Yeah, most people would be clueless about what I was talking about. So a lot of this stuff is like paying homage to those who came before me, to this great style of developing characters and making them fit.
Yeah, one thing, it's funny because I've, you know, been doing a discussion group here that's sort of devoted to hard-boiled and noir and that kind of thing. And we keep going back to Himes. And it's criminal how neglected he is, you know, for how important he is
Yeah.
to our genre that we love so much, you know.
Yeah, it's like me, I've always been a reader and I've always been a student of the game. I always feel like if you want to play, you have to study the greats. So you have to feed yourself. It's not saying that you have to like mimic them or anything like that. You have to study them. You have to see what I like to dissect authors in their work to see what makes them great. What little jewels and nuances can I maybe pick up from you? Like I say, I always give credit to Walter Mosley. Yeah. These great scenes, when I paint these backdrops that you guys love so much, that's something that I picked up from him. This colorful dialogue that everybody's always praising me for, I picked up from Iceberg Slim. The way to move the story forward, Donald Goines. So it's like you're learning a little bit. Again, it's something that I'm owning and making my own, but I'm learning from these guys. These are some of the greats. And it's not just them, like they're writers across genres. Jeffrey Deaver, Laurel K. Hamilton, Kim Harrison. You know, so there's just different people I read according to what my mood is.
Yeah. And then, yeah, as I said before, you know, elements of all kinds of different stuff come into your work and it becomes your own.
Yeah.
I like how you mentioned Walter Mosley because, you know, he was really groundbreaking in so many ways.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, if you think about it, you know, the wide population, we knew Raymond Chandler's LA, you know, we knew James M. Cain's LA, but, you know, Mosley takes us into the Central Avenue scene.
Yeah, a whole different, and it's like in the way he does it, only he could do it like that.
Yeah, no, he's
his spin on words is so unique. He has his own very unique spin on words.
And the cool thing about him, you know, kind of like yourself, is that he is such a restless intellect that he's not content to do the same thing over and over.
Can't
you know, he'll do the easy Rollins, but then he'll do just these wildly interesting standalone, you know, like John Woman that came out a few years ago. Or
yeah, I just finished it.
Fuck, man, that is a brilliant book.
It is because it was nothing like I expected.
Me too.
He signed a copy of it for me when I was in Houston, and I just recently, and I ended up getting the audiobook and listening because I was, you know, I'm always moving around, and it was nothing like I expected. But it was such a brilliantly written book. It was so thought provoking The story was there, but it was really challenging you to think on a higher plane
Yeah.
more than anything.
Does reading a book like that inspire you to just to say, you know what, I can do whatever I want to
Yeah,
do?
absolutely,
You know?
absolutely. Because I want people to have the effect that that book had on me. When I was done, I had to sit and process what I had just consumed, and that doesn't happen a lot. So I said, man, well, what did he do? Like, how do I spin a story to where I want people to sit and have to process my words too, because it was just so different. It was just so left field. Like, he has the Easy Rollins, he has the Bad Boy Brawley Browns, he has the Illinois McGills. But this thing that he did with John Woman, man, it was just so far out of the scope. I never saw it coming.
Yeah, no, and
And
it was,
there was no real closure. But you were so just enamored with everything else you digested in the book, it didn't hit you until after the fact. Like, wait a minute, did we really? Did what are we? You know, what are we supposed to take from that? How did it? Was that the ending, or was that like? How does that work? I don't know. That was just how I felt about it when I was finished with it.
see, so hopefully, Walter, we've sold a few books for you tonight, and some of Kwan's fans will go get that book.
Yeah,
I was I've been fortunate enough to meet him a number of times, and just last year I did one of these virtual programs with him, and we were talking about his Leonid McGill novella, Trouble Is My Middle Name, I think it's called,
mm-hmm.
which is a kick-ass novella. But we spent most of the time talking about John Woman because I was just grilling him about it. And yeah, it's a great book. But so let's see, what time are we looking at here? We still got time. Let's get back a little bit to, I just want to talk about, about the writing game, and maybe pick your brain about some of the mentors and sources of encouragement that you had as a young writer coming up. Were there people, I'm sure there were, that kind of pointed you in the right direction and encouraged you?
I mean, not in the beginning, no.
No,
No.
really?
When you're the new kid on the block, they treat you like a leper. And then what happens is sometimes it's more profitable to keep you ignorant, or to keep you insecure, to make you think like like I had an agent that convinced me not to pursue a deal with a major because I wasn't ready. And well, of course, that didn't last long. This agent was just like, he played on my own insecurity, because as writers, we're incredibly insecure people. We need validation. We need to be patted on the head and say, "Hey, great job," so to speak. So because and it's so crazy, the reason that he did it was because he was going to get a bonus kicker from the publisher that he got me to sign with, versus me going to sign with a major like I should have. So when I say like that's what I mean by it's more profitable to some people to keep you ignorant. I didn't have a lot of encouragement in the beginning, but I think as the years progressed, there were people like Leslie Banks, God bless. It was very instrumental in me signing with St. Martin's Press, because she was the one. I think she was saying her daughter read my books, and we used to talk back and forth. I don't remember if it was the MySpace or the AOL Instant Messenger. We used to talk back and forth, and she was like, "Man, you're good. I'm going to tell my editor about you." And you have an agent? I said, "No, I don't have an agent." She said, "Get an agent," because major publishers at the time were not taking unsolicited manuscripts. So this is what led me to hire the agent who told me, "No, don't go there." And that's another story. So like people like her encouraged me. And then I haven't met like certain people along the way, like Walter Mosley. The first time I met him, he was good. Cameron Jonas Miller. So I found a lot of for as much as I was shunned, I was also embraced, and it came in just unlikely places. But this was later, I guess. When people see something as a flash in the pan, you want to kind of stay away from it. But maybe when people started to see that I was serious about it, like, okay, well, this kid can really write. He's just not here trying to get a check and go. Let's give him some good information. But in the beginning, no, I was a clusterfuck. I didn't know what I was doing, and nobody would tell me.
Now, one of the things I read was that, well, you mentioned Iceberg Slim, and I wanted to talk about him a little bit, and Goins, and people like that, who are writing, kind of street level books from, I mean, in those guys' cases, it was mainly in the, what, late 60s through the 70s, right? From like Holloway House, those
Yeah.
kind of books. Yeah. And then there's some other really good ones like Robert Dean Farr. And there was another one. Did you ever read The Jones Man by, it was a 1968 or 69?
I don't think so. I need to look for
Really,
that.
really cool underworld novel. Nathan Hurd, you know, people like that. Um, what gave you talked about with Gangsta, kind of there was a bit of an autobiographical element to it. Was there a breakthrough when you kind of gave yourself permission to write about your own experience or your own
Yeah.
world?
Yeah. Um, I think that I have Donald Goines to credit for that. Because for a very long time, and I always, don't get me wrong, I love to write paranormal. It was my first love. But I also had these stories that I wanted to tell about where I came from, my demographic, where I was from. But who wants to put it on paper that their parents were on drugs and nobody loved them growing up? So it's like you struggle with the, again, the insecurities come to play and the embarrassment of writing about what your circumstances are that you're from. Do you want the whole world to know that this is how you grew up? Do you want the whole world to know that these are the impoverished conditions that you live in? Whether it's true or not, it's something that you're just kind of tepid about putting out there.
Right.
And when I read Don Goings, and he just kind of just let it all hang out, like with stories with like Dolphin and Black Gangster and Black Girls, just the struggle, the
Daddy
plight.
Cool.
Daddy Cool, of course, that was my first Donald Goines book, actually. Daddy Cool, that
Really?
was the very first Donald Goines book. So to put it out there, the plight of the urban ghetto. I'm sitting here every day looking out my window at poverty. This is where I live at the time, where because I was still living in the hood, and I'm looking out the window and I'm like, there's so much going on, so much going on. And Donald Goines taught me not to be ashamed of where I come from, to write about it, to bring light to it, to let other people know, look, this is what's going on down here with us. Who cares? Who wants to do something about it?
Right. You know, it's funny in your books, there is, you know, if people, there's the kick-ass page turner element, but then there's a lot of positive messages salted in throughout, you
There
know?
has to be. There has
Yeah.
to be. I
Yeah.
want you to be. I don't just want you to be entertained when you read my books. I want you to be educated. If you have, if you read one of my books and you didn't take anything away from it and you didn't feel a type of way about it, then I didn't do my job as a writer with that particular story.
Let's see what
If
we
you
got
have,
here.
if you
All right. I'm just checking in to see what's going on.
read, okay.
Yeah. All right. A lot of people watching, but no real questions yet. So that's
That's
cool.
cool.
Um, yeah. So let me see. And also, you know, the role we're talking a lot about, you know, sort of the pitfalls of the whole publishing racket that you've learned. You know, you've had ups and downs throughout this last 20 years.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you've taken away from all this?
Um, the importance of education. You must be educated about anything that you plan to do, to invest your time in, to bet the farm on. A lot of people try to get by on talent alone, and I did that for a long time, just try to get by on talent alone. But I ended up making mistakes that I didn't have to make because I didn't take the time to educate me, and I didn't have anybody to educate me. So I think that that's one of the main things. Something else that I've learned, maybe not as high on a totem pole as, but originality. Because if you watch books, even with music, they're trends.
Yeah,
Something will come along and it will be the hot thing for right then. And
that's right.
everybody tries to follow that trend. And then what happens with that when that trend is not hot anymore? So you have to, at all costs, and it's very tempting, because you can be like, oh, I can make all this extra money if I follow this trend. But you have to resist that temptation and stay true to yourself. Because when the trend dies off and everybody forgets the trend, they're gonna remember the writer who stuck to what they felt, where they were coming from, and how they wanted to represent their stuff in their craft. Like, we remain original and we stay away from trends. So those are the ones that will be remembered. Like, they did it. The people that did it their own way.
Yeah. Um, And you're always going to be too late. You know, if you try
Yeah,
to jump on the Da
it's too
Vinci
late.
clone racket, you
Yeah,
know,
it's too late. Yeah, too
and
late.
it's also, you know, and if Johnny's watching, he knows this, that, you know, the main New York publishers, by and large, don't have a clue what's going to succeed, you
It's
know?
all got the dark.
Yeah. And so they find something that accidentally hits a nerve with the public, you know, which is at the right time, at the right spot, um, you know, and it taps into something that the public wants. Or maybe it's also just that they put a shit ton of money behind it and put it in front of everybody's faces. But something will succeed, you know, like the Da Vinci Code or you know, the girl with whatever.
The dragon. Yeah,
Yeah, and then people will just imitate that to death for the next couple of years, hoping to get a little of that.
but you know what? But the same thing happened with urban fiction. Again, like I said in the beginning, the majority of us were doing it on the street, independent bookstores like you guys. Then the majors came along. The majors said, well, "What is this buzzing? What is the buzz? The new buzz is urban fiction." And so what they started doing was buying up all the talent, giving major deals. I mean, you know, and we were making money, but nobody's ever said, "Here, this is a $170,000. That's all yours as an advance against your future earnings." And you're like, wait a minute, so you're going to give me $170,000 and I don't have to stand outside in the cold and do the book? All right, give me the money. So I started to say this, and they were buying up talent. And it wasn't that they knew who were the talented writers and who would just happen to be in the right place at the right time. They were just throwing shit against the wall to see what would stick. So that's kind of how that went. So it's trends.
Yeah, yeah. Well, can you give what are you working on now? And do you ever like to talk about that or prefer
Yeah.
not to?
Oh, I have another book coming out with Akashic, The Reluctant King. I don't know when the release date is. Johnny's probably waiting to see if I turn it in on time before they put a date on it. Because I'm notoriously late, and it's never about my head; it's about my heart. So I'm working on that. I got Animal 5 coming. I have a couple things coming. Couple things coming.
Speaking of, I did notice I got an advanced copy of Black Lotus too, but then I also got a finished copy, and I noticed the dedication to the book. And so I just wanted to say, you know, deepest sympathies on your
Thank you,
losses this last year. It sounds like it's been a
man.
tough year in a lot of different ways.
The last maybe almost 2 years had been kicking my ass. Like at the end of 2019, going into the beginning of 2020, was just bad. It was just bad. It was like you never expect. Can you just imagine somebody like pulling the rug out from under your life? No one and no expectation. And every time you try to get up, they snatch that rug again. And so I think that with the Black Lotus novella, and I explained this to Johnny, and it was great about understanding with the Black Lotus novella. I crawled into a really dark hole during that time. But when I came out, you know, it's like when you pick yourself up, like you ice those bruises and you get back to what you love and what makes you great. I think that the book came out way better.
I was going to say, did that experience energize the book?
Absolutely. At once I
Yeah.
was able, like I said, like with stuff like that, because these were like the people who I lost were really close to me. These were people that I spoke to every day who contributed to my everyday life, you know? And so it was like it was just crazy for me. It was really rough. It was it was something really heavy that happened to me at the time. So it was not something easy to recover from. But when I did, and even still now, I have my moments, you know, because since then we've lost more people and more stuff has happened.
Yeah.
So it's like I just kind of keep pressing on, you know, throughout the life. And a lot of people, man, if half of the things that happened to me in the last 2 years had happened to the average person, they wouldn't be able to cope and compensate. They wouldn't be able to deal with it.
And as you were saying at the very beginning, you know, it kind of ties in nicely. You know, you find that your writing kind of saves your ass. It helps you kind
Yeah,
of work through this stuff.
yeah, my safe place. But even with the writing, sometimes I find it like when I'm locked in, I'm locked in. But with so much going on in the world today, uh,
Yeah.
it's not as easy to slip. It's not as easy to slip into the matrix as it was, because you're just weighed down by so many anxieties and so many different things. Go on, let me tell you something. We have the running joke in my house, right? It's like I'm the maze runner, because I'm the one who goes and makes the supply runs. So, it was just so like, I'm the maze runner, because that's what it's like. You got to navigate all of this stuff just to go to the supermarket.
Yep.
You get my mask up, my gloves up, my sanitizer, my hands wash. Is somebody in here are they social distancing? Will I be able to get enough of what I need from here today, or will I have to go to 3 stores? So just the average trip to this, going to the store has become one of my biggest adventures.
So you're the one they send out to get some provisions and bring them back to the.
Yeah, because
I know.
yeah,
We all have.
You want to be that person when it comes to a choice between you or your family. I would rather run out and roll the dice, as opposed to have one of them have to go out.
Exactly. Yeah. And out here, I'm sure you're in New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
Is everybody? I mean, it's probably not as crazy as it is here in Arizona, but is everybody being careful?
Yeah. So I mean, you know what? Not everybody. You have some people that are still in this phase of, I don't know if they think that they're above the pandemic or they just don't believe. But I'm a believer, and some people, they just see people gathering and running around with no mask, and I understand, because it's like the way you have to live now is so restricted, but at the same time you have to be safe. Yeah. If we go places, let's say if we take a vacation, with our friends, we usually go on vacation together. Everybody has to get their COVID test and make sure that we are being safe. If we're going to gather, let's be safe. Yeah. It's a pain in the butt. Everybody goes and takes but it's a necessary evil now. It's not like before we're passing around colds. We're passing around something that could potentially kill you.
Yeah. I know. It's a crazy, crazy time. Let me just see if I have anything else before I let you go. I appreciate all the time you spent.
No problem, man. I'm glad to do it.
Yeah. Well, I just wrote these kind of incoherent notes. There are a couple of little conventions that I like in the books. I mentioned kind of the pulpy sort of elements, like the ad in the Village Voice, which is how a person contracts the black. I love that. And also, and here's maybe a final thing. I wanted to ask you about editors and the importance of editors in your world, because Kala has Mrs. Jones, and I thought, Mrs. Jones, that's also something that's got to be personal to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always tell people, and I'm glad you asked me this, I've always been a great writer, I guess. But I had the privilege of working with Monique Patterson at St. Martin's Press for like 12 years, over 12 novels. I've lost track of how many books I put out with St. Martin's Press. And she was the one who taught me, okay, you're good with words, but this is what's going to make you better. This is how you polish your words, because your words are important. So, in that way, so instead of me just, like the whole raw energy, no. You reel it in. This is how you do it. Use this word instead of this word and see how the sentence ranks. Stuff like that. I've worked with a lot of editors, and some of them were good, but she is the one who helped me to grow as a storyteller. And I always give her props for that. She's the GOAT, living legend.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So that's kind of a shout out to her in some ways.
I always do.
Yeah. Well, Kawan, hey, I really appreciate it. And thanks so much. It's been a real treat talking with you tonight.
Likewise, man. Thank you for having me. And thank you for pushing the book.
Everybody, just to wrap up, this is the book this is the new book. It's out everywhere. If you don't get it from us, get it at an independent bookstore.
Independent bookstores.
Support your community and this wonderful press, Akashic Press. And have a wonderful holiday season. Stay safe.
Man, thank you so much. I appreciate it. You guys stay safe. I'll catch you on the later side.
All right, Kwan.
All right.
Have a good night, man.
You too.